So oranges and grapes on the wallpaper in Sword and Shield, sure, I guess that's a reference to Scarlet and Violet, and the character wearing his croc, who's a croc. It's Fuecoco as a shoe. Is that a reference? Is that what that is? Are these things references, or are we really squinting to see things here? The thing is, it's not that Pokemon doesn't like doing this thing. Pokemon loves to predict future stuff. It's just how many of these are legitimately and purposefully placed, and how many of them are not. But my assumption is, given the way that Game Freak works, while they do probably have a 3, 5, and even possibly 10-year plan, that plan is open to changing and shifting. My main evidence for that being Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee that came out within 3 years of Pokemon Go's release. I'm assuming the development of those games started very quickly after Pokemon Go got very popular and was not in the original plan because no one expected Pokemon Go to do what Pokemon Go did. So was there time in Sun and Moon and Ultra Sun and Moon for predictive things to be put into the game for Let's Go? There's not a lot of references in there, but Pokemon Sword and Shield is different because it's the first game in the franchise to have DLC, content that's downloadable after the main game came out. And that means that the Isle of Armor and Crown Tundra are the places that are most likely to have any references to upcoming future Pokemon plans. And actually, the closer I look at the Crown Tundra, the more I see of Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. Let's take a look. So we know that Game Freak loves to hint their upcoming Pokemon games ahead of time. Most famously, and my favorite of these is in Pokemon X and Y, where you get gifted an item called the Strange Souvenir from a backpacker who says that they came from a region that wasn't Kanto, Johto, Hoenn, Sinnoh, or Unova. And given that the Kalos was the latest generation at that point, we knew it must have meant something. It must have meant about a new upcoming region. Given the Tiki-style theming to this Strange Souvenir, it was obvious this was a hint to the upcoming Alola games after the Alola games came out. Similarly, Pokemon has done this very recently with the new Pokemon DLCs. In the Isle of Armor, we get direct hints to Pokemon Legends Arceus. Don't believe me? Just take a look at Urshifu, a legendary Pokemon that comes in 2 forms, both Single Strike and Rapid Strike style. Of course, both of these styles are representative of the strong and agile style that appear in Pokemon Legends Arceus, but even more so than that, part of the main story of the Isle of Armor was going to a giant honey tree where you battled a Gigantamax Vespiquen. Of course, honey trees are super famous in the Sinnoh region, and in fact it's mentioned on the Pokemon website that Kubfu had to travel to other regions to train. At the time, I fully suspected that this was all hinting towards the re-release of the Sinnoh games, and of course then discovered that what this was really about was Pokemon Legends Arceus. The moment the first Legends Arceus trailer came out, showing the 2 styles of combat, and of course showing the fact that we would be revisiting the Sinnoh region in the form of Hisui, I knew that this was all one big reference to Brilliant Diamond, Shining Pearl, and Legends Arceus. So naturally, I've been looking a lot at the Crown Tundra. And now we have some trailers for Scarlet and Violet. I can't help but see the very clear parallels. In fact, I believe there are 5 of them. The first one, and it's kind of a small one, but the Crown Tundra was really our first step into open world. While the wild area was in itself effectively a giant route in the Pokemon world, this was the first time we had a town integrated with the open world of Pokemon. This is something we've only really seen played with a little bit in Pokemon Legends Arceus, with the Diamond and Pearl clan tents being a part of the open world sections of Pokemon Legends Arceus, but mostly the Galaxy Expedition Team headquarters and Jubilee Village as a whole, they're separate from the areas where you go catch Pokemon. But here in the Crown Tundra, we have Freezington, which you can walk straight in and out of into an open world where you can catch Pokemon. So that's sort of a hint in and of itself, but number 2, and the thing that got me thinking about this the most, is the 2 new Regis. Because while originally I saw the new Regis and thought, of course, this is a big reference to the upcoming Generation 4 remakes that featured Regigigas, King of the Regis, now we can look at them far more clearly. Regidrago and Regieleki. Do they remind you of anyone? The Regis are thought to represent ages, the Iron Age, the Ice Age, and the Stone Age, with Regieleki and Regidrago sort of representing the Dark Ages and then the future of technology, and would you look at that? Miraidon and Koraidon parallel this absolutely perfectly. This was a very clear and direct reference to the past and future. You can see how these Pokemon are clearly connected to the new legendaries. If that doesn't work enough for you, number 3 is Calyrex. Calyrex has a very peculiar ability noted in the Pokédex entries. It has the power to see through time. This is not something shared by the other legendaries of the Galar region. Zarude, Zacian, Zamazenta, Eternatus, none of them have the ability to look through time, but Calyrex does. And once again, the theming of time is clearly one of the core critical motifs of Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. This is further exemplified in number 4, the fact that the Crown Tundra is the land that time forgot. Here is the first and only place in the Pokemon world where fossil Pokemon roam freely as if they're living in the modern day. So once again, we have this motif of the future and the past. Fossil Pokemon living and just existing is now something that people are speculating could be a reference to future forms of Pokemon, and in itself may have been a hint to the Hisuian forms, which are existing past versions of Pokemon. But here in the Crown Tundra, time seems to put a lot of focus on it. And this idea of dinosaurs that live underneath the earth ties perfectly into to marry the Galar region to what's coming next in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. Because Pokemon Sword and Shield has the raid dens, it's got the max raid lair with legendary Pokemon living underground. And maybe none of this is quite working for you, but then there's number 5, something that combines all of these elements quite nicely. Calyrex rides on the back of 2 other legendary Pokemon, 2 horses, Glastrier and Spectrier. Now, the horse element may well be a bit of foreshadowing and a reference to the new forms of Dialga and Palkia, but the fact that Calyrex rides them, that may well be pointing to the fact that there are other rideable legendary Pokemon coming in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, because as well as time being a big theme and traveling and open world being a big theme, traveling on the backs of these Pokemon that look like motorbikes is also a huge theme. So you can see how the many themes of Scarlet and Violet all appear here in the Crown Tundra quite prevalently in the main legendary Pokemon of the game. At this point in time, while I'm convinced that the Isle of Armor contained a lot of foreshadowing for Pokemon Legends Arceus and the Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl, I'm now convinced that the Crown Tundra has a lot of foreshadowing hidden in it somewhere, hidden somewhere in the tundra for Scarlet and Violet. So who knows what else we'll find out there in the coming months. It is unfortunately the way with these things that often you don't know that the things are hints and foreshadowing until the new content appears and you can look back and go, oh, of course, we wouldn't have known until we saw Koraidon and Miraidon that Regieleki and Drago, or that Glastrier and Spectrier are ties and themes to the upcoming legends. But you know, it's always nice to see how cheeky and fun Game Freak are being. By the way, all of this is to say that they have planned the release of Scarlet and Violet and its themes for sure by at least the time of the Crown Tundra. So if there's anything in the Isle of Armor, the Crown Tundra, Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl, or Legends Arceus that you feel directly ties into Scarlet and Violet and its themes and motifs, I would love to know. What are you finding out there? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching, and of course, soar high, Pokemon Masters.
This is Ash Ketchum. You just watched a video by Birdkeeper Toby. That makes you a Pokemon Master!
As always, a massive thank you to those of you who support this channel on Patreon. You make this channel possible, and a special thank you to the big patrons of this month, the Elgator, Jedruben, and Michael Hornschuch. Thank you.